Do you remember when you were a kid and people were saying that you were the future? It's been said over and over and in many different ways, because for reasons that we are able to see clearly now, the world in that moment seemed like it could be better. Today, those kids are all grown up. We are the future and we are reimagining a better world. In the face of everything going on across the planet, we still love, hope, create, and have fun, because these are all the things we want for the future. But why wait until tomorrow? The future is now. Welcome to the Reimagine Spokane podcast. This is The Future is Now. I'm here with Naghmana Sherazi, who is a jack of many trades, wearer of many hats, and one person, I don't know how she does it. She's amazing and awesome and passionate. I just can't even explain all the things she does, so I'm going to let her do it. Naghmana, could you please give us a little introduction about yourself and how you got into all of this work, primarily with the Lands Council, but I know you have just a depth of history and passion and experience that has brought you to civic engagement in general.
So, Ryan, as you said, I'm aware of many hats, and there is a story behind it, of course. So in 2012, when I moved to Spokane, I was working for a genetic testing company that kind of gave me a really good idea about, health and health disparities and how things affect us on a chromosomal level, literally. I lost that job because the company folded a year after I got here. And then I was like, where do I go from here? So I got engaged in community, working with immigrants and refugees, being Asian, being a single mother, working on the environment, being an educator, being a scientist, so many intersectionalities, right? So that brought me to all the different jobs that I've been doing. The most recent one is with the Lands Council. I work as the Climate Justice Program Director. And basically, what that allows me to do is to basically look at how the environment impacts people. And by people, I mean people who are lower income demographic, who are BIPOC, frontline communities, because climate and the environment affects us the most, brown and black and people of color, right? So how that kind of evolved into how I see living in Spokane. I ran 2 races for Spokane City Council, so that kind of got me a really good idea into the demographics of people who live here, which are the historically redlined area. And then the work with the Lands Council that I do is there's a program we call Spokanopy, and I'm sure you've heard of it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a whole lot of work that goes on behind the scenes on that with the Parks and Recs department, because we work with Parks and Recs and the Spokanopy program at the Lands Council. So what we do is we invite people to sign up to get a tree in that 5-foot strip right of way where there are lower urban canopy cover areas. We already have the demographic information, like for instance, up on the South Hill, 44% urban canopy cover in the more affluent, larger neighborhoods, because they have more space for trees. Where I live, Shiloh Hills area, that's the lowest in the city of Spokane at 10%. And despite the fact that outside my apartment complex, because it is all apartment complexes, so, every little space is taken up with whatever. So there's parking or, and so there's no green spaces. There's not enough green spaces. And so we're at 10%. And what the goal of the Lands Council is that currently for the city of Spokane, on an average, we're at 23% urban canopy cover. So by the year 2030, we want to be at 30%.
Awesome. That would be amazing. And so, all these things that you're doing with the Lands Council isn't just base level, like volunteer. I mean, there are volunteers, but it is about being political and being civically engaged. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it means for you to be in that sphere?
Both and the work that I did with APIC Spokane on the No Discrimination Spokane initiative in 2015, when there was a racial profiling initiative that was being placed on the ballot. And so we took it all the way to court, through appellate court, and then it went for review to Olympia. It got thrown out in all 3 instances, right? So that's where I became civically engaged and realized I have a voice and definitely representing a demographic of folks who aren't speaking up, being brown, being immigrant, being Muslim, whatever, the intersectionalities, there's not all that many people doing that. And I wanted to do that not just to be politically active or civically engaged. I think I was doing it more in the interest of my son, my
Yeah,
progeny from
for
here
sure.
on. What kind of world am I leaving for them? And so that brought me to that realization that having that voice and using it at the best possible time, it's very impactful. And then because I'm older, a lot of younger folks are looking at me and seeing me as a role model for them because, I've definitely been able to open a few doors, so that brings a lot of responsibility as well as, satisfaction that, I did what I set out to do. So that's where I started, ran my 2 races, started working as Climate Justice Program Director for the Lands Council. And that's mostly policy-related work. I do a lot of work with the legislature, making sure that, whatever policies are being passed or being put into place or proposed aren't impacting people like us, people who are lower income demographic, immigrants and refugees, brown and black and people of color, indigenous people, right? They're not impacting us negatively because we are the frontline communities. We are the ones who have the least wherewithal when it comes to any climate related event. We don't have the wherewithal to be able to pivot at the last minute because we don't have the money or we don't have the time, or most of us work 2 to 3 jobs. That's the norm for us, right? And otherwise, if you have young families, you don't have the time to be able to do that. So these are all important aspects of the work that I do, and that's what keeps me going for the policy making stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much again for just every single thing that you do and the things that you're going to do. I know there's quite a few things at stake in this election. There's going to be a bill to repeal the Climate
Commitment
Commitment
Act,
Act,
yes.
and that's at the state level. And we have also the presidential election this year. But if you could explain a little bit more about what you feel like is at stake in this election and why people should show up to vote up and down the ballot.
We've actually never had it this good where money is concerned coming into our communities from the Climate Commitment Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Growth Management Act. The Biden administration has been really, really intentional about making sure that all this money is coming into the communities. The CCA, or the Climate Commitment Act, actually does exactly that. It takes money from polluters and it puts it back into the communities where it's needed the most. So my son suffers from asthma, for instance, and whether we're talking about smoke in the air or we're talking about diesel or gas emissions, getting electric school buses. So that's money coming from the Climate Commitment Act, right? Or planting more trees is money that's going to DNR, which is one of the grant funding organizations that gives us, the Lands Council, the money to be able to do the work. Ecology, because they're working on clean air and all of that. And trees are such a huge measure of equity. And they basically, because trees not only provide green spaces, they're good for your heart health, they're good for your, biodiversity in our area, cooling down everything, the temperatures in our streets, the temperatures overhead in our living spaces. If you have the space to be able to plant a tree, definitely that's what you should be doing. So when we think about this time in history and this time in where we have a voice to be able to actually bring to fruition some very, very important goals. If you are at all climate savvy and realize that, how fast the climate is affecting the heating of our global weather and how it's impacting people like us and all communities like us. Like, it's not just us. I mean, it's not just frontline communities, but, think about, like, the ocean levels are rising, right? Because the sea is the acidification of the water. There's so much that I could go into, but people on the Salish Sea are having to move their entire indigenous communities inland so that they won't be affected because of tsunami issues, or that could happen, and those cost like billions of dollars. So imagine if we could do something to mitigate the effects of climate change and bring it back, tone it back, dial it back, however we can. And it takes every single one of us. I don't ever want anyone to say, but I'm just one person, because that's not true. Because you have the ability, use your voice, use your vote to make sure that you elect the people who are going to be doing stuff for you and your community and your family, so that everyone's healthy and safe.
Yeah, heard that. Love it. That's exactly what we need people to hear, and for them to know that they're not alone either in this, that there's folks like you and me and just everyone that is in the community probably has thought about these issues. And, some of them aren't totally aware of all the organizations that are doing all this work. And I know you touched a little bit on like Spokanopy with growing trees and bringing those to the community and doing policy work. Can you talk about like why is your organization needed, and what systems and structures and gaps does your organization address? I know you touched a little bit on redlining, and I mean, you're talking about the environment. That's like the entire planet. So I'll let you go ahead.
The Lands Council is not the only entity. We are a conservation-related agency who have been around for like 40 years. Next year is going to be our 40th anniversary. And the work that the Lands Council does, there's a whole lot more than just the Spokanopy program. Spokanopy is just one of the things that we do. We do a lot of reforestation. We, like in all the areas, trees are just amazing.
Yeah, we love trees.
They don't just give you shade and cool the atmosphere down. They also provide biodiversity. But one major function is that when you plant them along streets, or whether you plant them along streams, what they do is they hold the soil. And at the same time, through their roots, they're doing this uptake of water, which is then being filtered out and then putting oxygen back into the air, and of course condensation, which helps the rainfall, so it gives you clean water, right? So and the other work that we do is called beaver dam analogs, or BDAs, where we build and weave dams like beavers do, and kind of like introduce them to beavers or beaver colonies. And we do it in such a way because beavers are really, really important to the ecological system. What they do is when they build dams, the dams cause the streams to flood, and it floods the floodplains. But the biggest impact of it is that all that soil erosion stops, the nutrients stay there, and it helps the forest regrowth and the areas regrowth. But the biggest impact of that is that the water that floods and then comes back through the soil, through the sediment, back into the creek or the river, which will then end up in the Spokane River or in our aquifer, which is what we use to drink water from. That's cleaner water. It takes away all these toxins that are left behind in the soil, or it mitigates it. So the beavers are very, very important. So this is kind of part of the work we do. The policy-related work for me personally is like when I see FERC giving permission or a license to expand a 60-plus-year-old pipeline, which they're going to be pumping more gas through. Now, we're trying to get away from burning fossil fuel. That's really, 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 really important, because if we stop burning fossil fuels, it actually cools down the Earth's atmosphere, and that's good for us. And so that's the kind of, I would get together some organizing skills, use my organizing skills to get together a campaign to make sure that people know and educate them and make them aware about, what's in it, what are the stakes, why is it important is because these pipelines are running through very, very densely populated areas. It comes through the panhandle of Idaho, through Spokane, through Liberty Lake, actually, Spokane Valley and Liberty Lake. And those are really densely populated areas. It's a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. That's, God forbid, something like that happen. Can you imagine how huge a human toll that would be? And they're not concerned. They're only concerned about profit. So
Who's they?
The GTN Express people who own the gas pipeline. So that for me is a big no-no. So that's the kind of work that I've been doing. 350 Spokane is another organization. I'm also on their board, so we work together. There are so many other entities who are doing activism work, doing education, doing outreach, legislative session work. And so all of it combined means it's all policy. It's all policy related, and to push policies in the direction where we don't have the human cost, where we're making sure that our frontline communities are safe and they're healthy and they're thriving.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, political in its base and policy are the same thing. And so, what are some of or have there been any political or policy wins that your organization has been proud of, or just any other small or big wins over the past?
So there's it's like an ethics committee called the State Building Codes Council. So the Lands Council has been working with this, we work with them to kind of make sure that our codes are up to date for buildings. So, one of the big wins, and I represent the Lands Council on the City of Spokane's Sustainability Action Subcommittee Steering Committee. I'm first vice chair, and one of the jobs that we have kind of allocated ourselves is to make sure that the Sustainability Action Plan is put into place properly. And one of the things on the Sustainability Action Plan, or the SAP, was that we wanted to get away from standardizing gas hookups for all new construction, because having gas means burning more fossil fuel. So the SAP was kind of suggesting that keep the hookups where it's not standardized. I mean, you can still get the gas hookups, if you want it for your building, and there's nobody stopping you from that. There was no process to stop the whole process, but definitely to kind of make it more affordable, whether it's creating more jobs or whether it's making it more accessible or more equitable for people, and making sure that we've got electric hookups more so, because using an electric heat pump is much better than having a gas heater in your home. Because when you use a gas heater for 1 hour, or even when you're cooking with gas on your stove for 1 hour, the atmosphere inside your home is actually 30% worse than what it would be outside.
Because it's filling up with gas.
Methane.
Yeah.
And it always leaks. Methane will always leak. There is, even if you've got everything turned off, it will always leak. So adopting the SAP was a big win for us. And then just last legislative session, we kind of organized around making sure that there is a bigger infrastructure for EVs to be charged. Avista came in on that, and they've been working on that, and that's really, really crucial, because transportation sector for the state of Washington is the fastest growing, that's causing pollution and emissions and causing carbon to be in the atmosphere, which causes global warming, right? So we are at 25%, which is really, really high for the state of Washington where transportation is concerned. So a huge win was passing the bill to have electric school buses, because then it's healthier for your children, because you obviously want your children to be healthy. And if you got a fully electric grid thing going on at your home, then your child is happy and healthy, and you don't want them getting on a bus that is full of emissions and causing them to have asthma, God forbid, and then coming to a school which, again, there's commerce. The Department of Commerce is putting so much money through ARPA funding into making sure that our HVAC systems in schools are up to date and they're more efficient and not putting pollutants back into the system. So, it's all the way. Your child is leaving a healthy home on a healthy school bus, going to a healthy environment at school.
Yeah, totally. That all sounds like it's all about healing. And we've had practices and systems in place that haven't really cared for people or the planet. But that's really what we're talking about, and the work that you're doing sounds like it's very healing. And so, what would you say that healing looks like for you individually and also in your community?
So I'll start with my community first. So as I said, I'm Muslim. I represent the Muslim community in a certain way. Not every person is, I'm not representing every single person, but there's certain aspects of being Muslim, being a good steward of the earth, taking care of your water resources, taking care of trees, and all of that is a huge part of my faith and other people as well. So when I stand in front of somebody, I am trying to bring a lot of voices from my community to that event or to that subject, and to kind of push it forward from there, in such a way that we are heard and seen, and our needs are taken care of, because the Muslim community in Spokane is very, very small. But when I speak on the personal level, it's really important to me that 15 years down the road, who knows, my grandkids, when they look at me and they say, well, Mom, Grandma, you had the chance, the opportunity to make a change, make a difference, and you didn't take it. I don't want to be in that position. So I want to be able to tell them, yes, we worked on this. Yes, this clean air that you breathe today, all these measures that you see that are in place, or the 7-point source contaminators who put toxins into the river water that people can't paddle in because it's bad for them, or you can't eat fish from the river. We stopped all of that at a certain point in time. Yes, we have BDAs or beaver dam analogs that allow us to bring tributaries and everything with clean water that merge into the Spokane River. Whether it's Hanford or whether it's the leaching of the uranium at Indigenous land, and that's a really big part of what I do as well. Is I work on making sure that if I have my say anytime, and making sure that Indigenous populations have been taken advantage of for so long, for centuries, and they were here. They, like the Spokane tribe and the five tribes of the Upper Columbia, have been in this region for 14,000 years, right? And so we've taken advantage of their resources and really, really, not been reciprocating in kind and taken them for advantage of them and taken them for granted. And there's so much wisdom and native knowledge, and it's local knowledge, right? Whether it's hunting, gathering, whether it's how to farm, or whether it's water, all of these things, right? So when I look back on a personal level, when I'm really, really old, I'm halfway there already, but I'm really, really old. So I want to be able to say I made a difference. It's important to me because of my faith. It's important to me because I chose Spokane to live here. I'm an immigrant, and I want to make a difference because eventually, God willing, my son will have children, and I want to make it a better world for those children and for other children like them, to make sure that we are leaving a planet that they can thrive on, that they can live on comfortably.
That's amazing. Just hearing that healing for you is healing the planet and making it better for everyone else. And that's incredible. And thank you so much for, again, just being that champion. And I know there's a lot of really challenging things happening just every day, but also with those wins that you've had, how do you celebrate and bring joy into your life? Because we have to celebrate those small wins.
I celebrate every win, and I do it by breaking bread in community. I invite people to dinner, to lunch, whatever. I love cooking. My mother was a good cook, so she passed on some really good recipes. So people like the food that I do. And everybody, it's authentic food, right? So everybody likes that. So I cook, and the other way I celebrate is I take my son and my dog and we go, hiking, or we go, because there's so many natural trails around here. Apparently, when I moved here, I read somewhere that if I were to go on a different trail every day, every single day, a different trail, right? Every single day for 4 years, I would not be repeating one.
Wow.
So that's a lot of trails in
Yeah.
the area. And although my ankles and, like I suffer, I'm getting old, as I said, I suffer from arthritis a little bit. But, just the joy of being out in nature and realizing this is what I'm trying to protect. This is where I live and I love it so much. And it's exhilarating. It just, I can feel my mind expanding when I'm out there, and there's the blue sky above, and all this greenery around me, and the sound of rushing water somewhere, and my son and my dog nearby. I think that's the perfect blend for a celebration.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope that you get to somehow get through more trails than not before you get really, really old. I still don't see you as a very old person. You're very energetic and you have a young spirit. And so I'm like, dude, Naghmana is one of us.
Thanks.
Um, so this next question is about reimagining Spokane and what some of your um, just what your passion and your ideas are about it. And I know that you also had recently been a part of the 50th year anniversary of the Expo celebration, where, from my perspective, what Expo was a reimagining of Spokane to some extent. And if you could talk about kind of where that took us, and obviously where we should continue to go with it, we would just love to hear that from you.
So one of the things, Ryan, I took on board was from you, actually. Was
Uh-oh, what did I say?
you designed that T-shirt which said Spokane, but it was like, how you see in your rearview mirror, you look at an ambulance, it's written, but
Uh-huh.
if you look at it standing in front of it, it's written the wrong way around. You kind of
Right.
like, oh, no, this needs to be different. So it's like reflected in your rearview mirror, it's read the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you did, but you wrote Spokane. And then that's how you reimagined Spokane. And I actually loved that idea, that whole theory behind it, that whole concept behind it. You cannot move forward unless you look behind you and you learn from your past experiences, the knowledge that you've gathered and gained, the experiences that you've had, the people that you've met along the way, and what you are kind of basing your experiences on, because you got to forgive a little bit, and then you've also got to take some stuff on and then evolve, right? So you can't move forward unless you evolve. And so that was one of the basic themes that I kind of incorporated with Expo's 50th anniversary. What I did was I went back to 1974, and of course my whole big peeve with the way it was all happening at Riverfront Park with Trent Alley, and the fact that there were so many Asian immigrants who were actually living in that area. There was a thriving Chinatown there. And so, yes, the rail yards weren't the best. There was a lot of leaching of toxins into the river, and it wasn't the best. It was like stagnant water or whatever. It wasn't very beautiful. It's not like the beautiful park that we have now. But the way it was done, they literally shunted off all these Asian workers who had literally built the Inland Northwest Railroad on their backs and brought the people to Spokane, so to speak, right? And turned it into this thriving city that it is now today that we see. And Expo 74 was hosted as the world's largest environmental themed fair of its time, and was also held on the 100th anniversary of Spokane City.
Hmm.
So when we
Okay.
so when we held these celebrations from May 9th, May 4th till July 4th this year, celebrating Expo's 50th anniversary, we were also celebrating 150th anniversary of Spokane City. And so I kind of looked at it. I had a lot of help from a lot of different folks, and I created these couple of videos, which I don't know if you've seen them, but what I talked about in those videos was Expo 74, when it was held as the world's largest environmental themed fair, was looking at all these legislators to come to that fair, to look at all that we're doing for the environment, what are the needs in Spokane, and take it from there to Okay, here you go. You're a legislator, you see the need, create a policy, stop global warming. How do you create these mitigation and adaptation measures which will continue for us to be living in a thriving, happy life in a beautiful, environmentally friendly city? So there were different areas that I looked at. So one definitely was, language justice, language access, and how that prevents certain populations from being able to access information that they need, right? We have 4 seasons. No, actually, we have 5 seasons because we call fire season, it's a season. And, so whether it's because of heat or because of cold or because of smoke, and we don't get information to people on time, they're going to suffer because of it. So who does that affect? Who is that population? So it's all unhoused folks, people who live on the verge of being unhoused. So like affordable housing or lack of affordable housing is a huge issue. And immigrants and refugees, because we all don't speak English and we don't all have access to information. There are people in our communities because Spokane is a sanctuary city. We've had immigrants and refugees coming here since the 90s, actually earlier than that, since the 60s, but the largest wave was in the 90s when Bosnia-Herzegovina disbanded, and there was so much ethnic cleansing happening, and so a lot of Bosnian Muslims came here at that time. And then, of course, we've already had people, during the Vietnam War, so there we have a huge a population of refugees and immigrants who don't speak English as their native language. So, what are we doing? How are we getting the information across to them? So that was one aspect of it. Indigenous rights. There's been so many broken treaties. So water, or cleaning up Hanford, or cleaning up the Midnight Mine. How are we going to go about that? So all of these things, affecting Indigenous folks, right? And then, so housing and homelessness, immigrants and refugees, Indigenous rights, climate and the environment, that's the work that I do. And that's the work that's important from the Lands Council's perspective. What are we doing? The health of our aquifer, what kind of water, because Lake Coeur d'Alene, where part of our water comes through, it has the tailings. It's a tailings pond from all the mining that happened. And so the bottom 10 feet layer is all heavy metals just sitting there in the water. And so when we talk about, leaching, we talk about all these point source contaminators. One more time. So when we talk about all these 7-point source contaminators who are dumping into the Spokane River, and so all those toxins actually end up in the fat tissue of fish. Right? So they're swimming through it, they're ingesting it, they're living in it. And so big fish eat little fish, and so on and so forth up the food chain until these fish land up on our tables, on our plate. And our fat cells, adipose tissue, also then bioaccumulates all of that they've been bioaccumulating, right? And it's really, really bad for us. And so health equity is a huge issue. And whether we talk about gender, we talk about LGBTQ community, we talk about health disparities, we talk about reproductive rights, all of this is affected by this whole environment and all the environmental justice issues that are created because of all this dumping in our river and the water that we drink, whether it's lead content. So it's, so that was another group. And then, of course, lead is a big factor in developmental delays in children. So, when we talk about education, we talk about the intersection of education and the environment and how that's affecting our children. They can't do well if it's so hot, and there's a whole demographic of our population that are misunderstood and misrepresented anyways. And so if they come across, because if they're not happy, they're not healthy, the heat is affecting them, then, there are misunderstandings and misconstrued everything. So, how people react to our children, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much, and it's you're wondering what it has to do with climate justice. This is climate justice, because to me, climate justice is racial justice, right?
Absolutely.
So when we talk about all of these things and we talk about policy, so one of the biggest criticism that came out once Expo 74 was over was that not enough legislators attended Expo, so there were no policies. So Expo wasn't able to drive those policies to be put into place. So there was no mitigation adaptation processes that were put into place. So we hosted this summit to kind of pick up from there and say we invited all these legislators to come to Spokane. We invited all these facilitators who are people who are in the community and really passionate and knowledgeable about each realm of each topic. And so we put them all together with just regular people who are passionate about these different topics in these breakout sessions. And we were able to create policies, craft policies that we are going to be presenting in the legislative session starting in January. And we do have it on good faith with most of the legislators who attended that they will be sponsoring these policies because they were in the room that Spokaneites created these policies.
Great.
So, moving forward, that's my dream that, 1, 2, 3, who knows, maybe a policy can end up on the governor's desk for signing by April. That would be phenomenal. And Spokaneites did that. We came together and said, these are our needs, and this is what we need, and this is how we want you to kind of look into this. And it's very specific to Spokane. But, if you have a good model, it can be adapted statewide, even nationwide. Why not? Because and at the end of the day, the legislators are all people like us. We elect them. They are our voices in the legislature. So if my community is coming together, the whole city of Spokane, and saying, this is what my need is, our legislators are bound to hear us and do something about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it feels like the sky's the limit on what kind of policies can change, because we know a lot of them are negatively impacting our communities and the planet. And so thank you so much for putting that legislative summit on and continuing the legacy of what Expo, what it should have done. And we know that the work doesn't stop here. And if you could tell us a little bit more about how people can get involved in supporting your work, we'd love to hear that.
The Lands Council, for instance, we do Spokanopy drives in the spring and the fall. And what that means is we work with City of Spokane's Parks and Rec department to do GIS tracking to see which neighborhoods we're going to be working in. And once we figure out the dates and the area that we're going to be planting trees, we need a lot of volunteers to come and plant those trees. If we have 1,500 trees to plant, we also need something like, 3,000 people to come help plant this with us. So keep a track of where you can check for that on our website, so landscouncil.org. And, we go under events and, you can literally see all the different things that we do. And we do a lot of stuff. We do a lot of storytelling events, kind of involving community and bringing them together to, with their experiences of whatever the woodlands or whatever the topic may be. We have a public lands director, we have a reforestation director, and then the climate justice program. So these are very, very important. So if you have a few spare bucks, then donate to us. Every little bit makes a difference. So, if it's $5 or $150 or $1,500, whatever it is that you can afford, give that to us so that we can continue to do the work that we do, and so that we can continue with the programs, because we are totally dependent on grants. We don't have a donor base where it's not like a membership. We have a donor base, yes, but it's not a ton of money. So we are grateful for whatever money that you may be sending our way. Put us down in your will. Give us a legacy. No, seriously, because there are people who do that. So
wow,
yeah, I would love to see that happen for us, because every little bit, we're a nonprofit. Every little bit that we earn, we put back into the community, and that community is here in Spokane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I'm for some reason, Captain Planet is popping in my head. I'm like, Naghmana is now Captain Planet to me, of just educating and saving the planet and just bringing more people along and inspiring so many others. And so I just want to thank you again for joining us today and for again, just for everything. And we're so appreciative to have you in our community and for your voice to be heard and to, continue to inspire people. So thank you again.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was lovely talking with everybody. And if anyone has any questions, you can always find me on the website, Lands Council.
All right. Thank you again.
Pleasure.
On Saturday, October 19th from 12 to 9 p.m. at the Chameleon, come out to vote at our free ballot party, Better World, Better Vote. Agents for Collective Liberation and partners are bringing the party to politics and civic engagement because we can't imagine changing the world without having a little fun. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Empire Health Community Action Fund, our producer, Form Studio, our music producers, Ryan and Kyle, and to our listeners and voters for helping to create a future that we can have now. Thank you for listening to The Future Is Now. Currently, Reimagine Spokane is a program of Agents for Collective Liberation in Spokane. It was the brainchild of Executive Director Ryan Louie as the feeling and energy that we intend to belong and be accessible to everyone so that they can join us and others in creating a new Spokane. For more info, check out our website at reimaginespokane.us and find us on social media at Reimagine Spokane. Better World, Better Vote is just around the corner, and we would love to see you there. Beep!